Happy Monday morning. Hope weekend was great. I want to dive in this week and talk a little bit about AI because it is something that is constantly in our conversations. And I think what we've got to make sure we do is continue to talk about it so that if you are somebody who's just getting started in terms of kind of thinking down this path of how you're going to implement it into your business, that we can start to get a hold of how to consider AI as a part of your business, the things that you need to be considering using it for, and how to implement. I think that's the biggest challenge most people have is proper implementation. And so I want to go back and talk about this from the concept of not thinking about it as this genie in a bottle that can answer secret questions for us and run down some tasks and draft better emails. But I want to start to frame it as a person that's working in your business. If we go back, I guess when I'm getting started in this business, there was a lot of books written around having great partners, delegating your work well, doing proper handoffs to someone who is helping you facilitate your business. One of the books that comes to mind to me is called The E-Myth. There's an awesome book you should go read if you haven't, and it speaks nothing about AI. But I'll tell you what, I believe 100% that it gives a proper framework for how we should be beginning to utilize AI, at least in the short term, because it speaks about thinking about everything as a process, about thinking about when this happens, this is the next step, this is the expectation, this is the follow up, and creating this chain of events to be able to properly delegate work. And that's effectively what we're doing. So as we're talking about AI, I think we've got to remember a couple of things and we got to start considering these things. What is it that you want to use AI for? What are the tasks that you should be using AI for? And so as we're getting started on this, I think we should really consider what are the things that I go back to a book that talks about, it's called The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, also a great book, also not about AI. And it discusses to first eliminate things that you shouldn't be doing. If you were to look at your daily calendar, what are the things you should not be doing? Get rid of them. The next would be to automate things if there's things that can be automated. This was before AI, right? And so the goal is, man, can we automate certain things that we do find important, we do deem as necessary, and then we delegate. And so the beauty is at that point in time, there was automation, which was technology, but then there was delegation, which was typically delegated to a person. I need somebody who can do 10, 15, $20 an hour activities for me so I can do $100 an hour activities, right? That was the mindset. Now we actually have the ability to, we should always eliminate. We should always be looking at our workflows and saying, what do I not need to be doing anymore? Eliminate. Then I can automate. And there's a lot more things now that are possible to automate because AI has stepped into a role where it can fully automate and then delegate. And now AI can also, in many instances, run delegated activities from start to finish. And what we're going to see is in the coming months, year, couple years, we're going to see that even grow, where we can fully delegate tasks where one AI agent can carry out a task, send it to another AI agent who you've given certain skills and permissions to, and they can close up the task, approve it, whatever it is, only bring you in when necessary. So we're going to start seeing more abilities here. Where I want most of us to focus right now is what about the automation piece? What are the things that we can take off of our plate that are low dollar activities and we can get rid of them altogether so that for only the purpose of you being able to go do higher level activities. So what are those? What are those for you? What are the things you do on a daily basis? Could be something as simple as a responding to an email. When this email comes in, I want this email to go out. When this text comes in, I want this text to go out. That is a proper beginning framework for how a lot of these things start. But what I want you to start to really consider is then what? And this is where I go back to the E-Myth book because it talks about this entire process of events that we just don't think about in terms of a fully thought out process. We think about the things that I can only do that because I only know what to do. Well, okay, how do you know what to do? How did you decide the next best step was to send a follow-up email that was drafted like this and connecting them to your lender and sending them this set of information? And then when's that next communication going to go out? Well, we're going to set a task to call them on 3 days later. Okay, automatable. And then I'm going to follow up 7 days after that, and then I'm going to set a follow up for the closing anniversary. And so as you start to really think through all of these things, if you can take what is up here that you're making up on the spot, right? And you say, this is the best way to do it. You've just never actually written it down, and you start to write it down. You start to formulate what a real process is like. You could truly build out a real sales agent that can do it repeatedly for you over and over and over again. Now, that's not where it is ever going to stop. But I'll tell you, I think the people who have the most challenging times processing how to utilize AI, they've not actually ever tried to convert thought process into a process that they could put on paper. Right. And so I challenge you to do that first. If you were just to explain yourself to someone else, here's how I go about doing that. And you start to write down this list of events that happen every time this happens. What is that? Can you write it down? If you can't, you probably should be able to, because otherwise you're just going at it on a whim every time. When something happens, what we call that is a trigger. This is something else I want to make sure is very clear and understood. So what is a trigger? Well, a trigger is a required first action in any AI automation. Okay. And the word trigger is utilized anytime you're building out AI workflows. So what is a trigger? A trigger is something that kickstarts the next set of events. So process that. If everything requires a trigger, now you could have manual triggers, go, right? But what is going to happen there? It's going to be left up to you to be a part of it. And what we want to do is remove ourselves as much as we possibly can so that we are not a clog in the wheel. If AI is reliant on you to start it and finish it and check in on it and keep it going, it's never going to be sufficient. You've got to figure out how to start a trigger. So a trigger could be a new lead comes in to my system, right? Comes into Follow Up Boss, what we use, or any of the other CRMs. When that lead comes in, what happens next? There's got to be a next set of events. And so you say, well, leads come in all different ways. And this is where people get stuck. Cool. We've got to figure out how to make every lead come in, kickstart this trigger. Okay. So every system will have different ways of getting leads. If you get an email, it can extract from the email and set it up in your system. That starts this process. If it comes into you by way of just your phone, you've got to put it in the system. But as long as you know when I put it in the system, this is going to happen because you've set your triggers up properly, you're going to have a proper workflow that's going to happen the same, consistently, the right way every time. And when you start to see that this can be possible and this unfolds and it elevates you, it's going to change everything. So I want you to be thinking about what are the triggers in your business? What are the things that begin every process? That is the question. That is the trigger. And so you've got to start to establish where your trigger points are. And you might have different trigger points through different parts of the sales process. You might have different trigger points with how you respond to emails. An email comes in. If it is someone who is in my contacts base and it is directed, I'm not BCC'd on it, it's directly to me. It goes into a file that requires follow-up and my AI can begin drafting that follow-up and then I can just review it, right? That is a very, so we can think about these on small scale and large scale, but you've got to start thinking about it. And this is where I want most of you to begin, is just to begin starting to think about where's a trigger? What are the full set of follow-up processes that I could do that take me out of it, that I actually will do it better, more consistently, in a repeatable way? That part is what's going to change your business. And finally, the last thing I want you to think about is stuff that can work for you and produce a higher level of outcome than you could have done yourself. Research is a great example. As you start considering research, why not start here? Why not start by giving a really good prompt for what you're trying to research, and then you can go back and review, right? So we're going to get rid of the activities we can eliminate that are not important for us to be doing. They're things that keep us busy. They're not things that keep us productive. And then we're going to level up the other side of the equation, which is maybe where you feel the most valuable. You're doing a due diligence for somebody on a house or a piece of land or a building. Why not allow AI to do a lot of that research for you, consolidate it, and then you can review, and then you can send the final findings to a customer? Why not throw in all of the inspection data and all of the due diligence data and let it help consolidate it so that you can have a proper, educated, good workflow conversation with your customer before beginning your negotiations? So these are things that it can do in minutes that would take us hours. And so it's going to do it at a higher level. It's going to consolidate things so that you can think clearly on the topic because we need to be freed up to not be in the weeds, but helping people make proper buying and selling decisions. And so let me roundhouse this thing. And so let me go back through our processes that we're going to be thinking about now. Proper triggers. What starts every process? Two, what are the things that are low level activities that you can automate using AI? And three, on the other end of the spectrum, what are the things that are super important that you bring to the table, skills that you bring to the table that you can elevate and actually deliver quicker on a higher scale for your customers?